2020. We'll begin by reading of the legal notice by our town clerk, Renee Waldron.
Legal notice, Town of Thompson, notice of special town meeting, January 8, 2020, notice of referendum, January 15, 2020. The electors and citizens qualified to vote in town meetings of the town of Thompson, Connecticut are hereby notified and warned that a special town meeting of said town will be held at the Thompson Public Library, Lewis and Motion Community Center, 934 Riverside Drive, North Grosvenor, Connecticut, on Wednesday, January 8, 2020, at 7 p.m. in the evening for the following purposes. 1, to choose a moderator for said meeting. 2, to consider and act upon the following resolution. Resolved to appropriate $4,700,000 for the roof replacement project at Thompson Public Schools buildings, of which an estimated 70.2% is to be refundable through the State of Connecticut Department of Administrative Services Office of School Construction. 3, pursuant to Section 7-7 of the General Statutes of Connecticut, revision of 1958 as amended, and the resolution adopted at referendum held October 9, 1997 regarding the submission of non-budgetary appropriations to referendum to adjourn said town meeting at its conclusion and to submit the resolutions to be presented under item 2 of this notice and to vote upon paper ballots, which vote in the absence of objection shall be held on Wednesday, January 15, 2020, between the hours of 12 p.m. noon and 8 p.m. Electors will vote at the following polling places. District number 1, Thompson Hill Fire Department, 70 Chase Road, Thompson. District number 2, Town Office Building, 815 Riverside Drive, North Grosvenor. District number 3, Quinebaug Fire Department, 720 Quinebaug Road, Quinebaug. District number 4, East Thompson Fire Department, 530 East Thompson Road, Thompson. Persons qualified to vote in town meetings who are not electors will vote at the Town Office Building, 815 Riverside Drive, North Grosvenor. Absentee ballots will be available from the town clerk's office. Absentee ballots will be counted at the following central location: Norman Babbitt Veterans Conference Room, first floor, Town Office Building, 815 Riverside Drive, North Grosvenor. Action on said items at the special town meeting will be limited to reasonable discussion only. The aforesaid resolutions will be placed on the paper ballot under the following headings. Shall the town of Thompson appropriate $4,700,000 for the roof replacement project at Thompson Public Schools building, of which an estimated 70.2% is to be refundable through the State of Connecticut Department of Administrative Services Office of School Construction. Voters approving the resolution will vote yes, and those opposing said resolution will vote no. Dated at Thompson, Connecticut, the 7th day of December 2019, Report of Selectmen.
Thank you, Renee. So we'll begin with item number 1, choose a moderator for said meeting. Do I have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Frank McGarry.
Do I have a second? Rob seconds. Are there,
Can we just have
John Rice?
the individuals?
John Rice, 39 East Thompson Road.
Robert Mann, 15 Middle Drive.
Are there any other nominations?
Move nominations be closed.
Seconded, John Rice, 39 East Thompson Road.
All in favor of appointing Frank McGarry as moderator for this meeting?
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? So Frank, take the floor.
Let me remind you, if you wish to speak, raise your hand, you'll be called upon. And if you are called upon, please state your name and give your address so the town clerk can record your remarks. All right, we'll entertain a motion to adopt Article 2, appropriate $4.7 million approximately for a school roof. Who wants the motion?
So moved, John Rice.
Who wants the second?
Donna Lynch, 212 Chase Road, Thompson.
Open for discussion. I understand, Mr. St. Ange, we have someone here who can explain the scope of this project.
We do. A citizen of ours, Justin Young, put together, along with the school board and the town hall, we put together a PowerPoint presentation for you tonight, just to explain some of the questions that you might have, to give you answers to that right from the get-go.
Good. Let us proceed.
Thank you all for coming this evening. It's really great to see a good turnout for this. It's an important project. It is an infrastructure in our town and something that we cannot just let go. So with that, I'll begin the presentation on the 2020 roof replacement project. So the facility background, the facility is primarily used as a school for grades pre-K through 12, approximately 1,000 students currently. The facility is also used for Thompson Recreation, St. Joseph Sports, private entities, theater activities, dance, concerts, community events, alumni functions. The Thompson Historical Society is also housed in the facility with some museums, tea, and PTOs. What is the issue? A significant portion of the roof at the Thompson Public Schools complex has substantial leaks every time there is water on the roof from rain, snow, or ice. Leaks have caused damage to the ceiling tiles and surrounding areas, resulting in 16 to 20 man-hours of work by maintenance staff to reactively remediate. Roof leaks can cause disruption to students' learning and can create safety concerns within the facility. This is an aerial view that was taken. And the next slide, I'm going to ask Bill Birch to maybe explain some of the areas.
Who's this gentleman?
Oh, Bill Birch, he's the maintenance director.
Birch, facilities manager for
Facilities
the
manager.
Board of Ed.
Fine, Mr. Birch, proceed.
So the areas in the aerial view that are cross-hatched, the areas that are proposed for replacement at this time, those roofs were put on between 24 and 32 years ago. The area with green arrows was put on 24 years ago. The area with the blue arrows was put on 32 years ago when the high school was built. So some of the things that are driving the cost up on this project, there's been some questions about how come it's so much per square foot. For one thing, there's a code requirement that the slope of the roof has to be changed to 1 inch per every 12. That requires substantial tapered insulation to be put on before the final roof membrane is installed. There is the possibility that additional roof drains will be necessary to take this rain runoff. When you look at the roof, particularly the high school, the way it was built in 1986, it was state-of-the-art construction at the time, but there are many, many structures on that roof: exhaust fans, ventilators, air intakes. Each of those has to be disconnected, removed, taken to the ground. Once the roof is put on, they all have to be put back on. Just as a point of reference, the complex has a total roof area of 250,381 square feet. We propose to replace 98,158 square feet. It's not quite 40%, very close. Another thing that drives up the cost is the fact that because this is state, and in some cases there's some federal money that comes back into the state to supply these projects, it means that everything has to be done prevailing wage. So the wages are set. There's a list by the state, and the wages are fairly high. You could get labor much cheaper if you did not have to follow prevailing wage rates. This is a list of the prevailing wage rates. You can see that they run between $31 an hour and $41 an hour for labor for the different trades. So when we first started looking at this project, our reimbursement rate was 70.2%, and that is why the warrant lists that number. However, as recently as last week, we checked, and our current rate is now 71.43%. So that means the reimbursement from the state is even a little bit better than we had originally thought. So the areas that are being replaced are all beyond their life expectancy. When a roof goes on, there's a warranty that comes with it. There's a life expectancy to that roof, and these roofs have all gone past that. So just last year, and this is the only year we've got numbers for, we spent $7,800 in roof repairs. Last year wasn't too bad of a year. Usually we spend around $10,000. I expect this year we're going to spend more than that because of the weather we've had. It's warm, it's cold, it's, the roof freezes, the roof thaws, and that's when we get the most damage. But besides that, the roof repairs don't even come close to what it costs to repair the interior of the building. When we have a leak in that roof, we have to get the ceiling tiles replaced as quickly as possible. Not as quickly as we'd like, but we move on it pretty quickly, and we spent $9,000 in ceiling tiles last year, and that does not include the cost of the labor to change them. And there's also extra time involved in that.
Okay, so a lot of people have asked, how is the project being funded? So I worked with Orla the last couple of days to put together some numbers, so I'll do my best to explain. If I look at Orla, it's because I need help with a few things, so bear with me. Short-term funding will initially be required to begin the project until we are refunded by the state. We will borrow $4.7 million at an estimated annual rate of 1.25%. Planning up to 24 months of short-term funding until we actually get reimbursement from the state. That cost for that short-term funding is estimated at $118,000. The total project, receiving that 71.45% from the state, would leave the town responsible, out of that $4.7 million, responsible for 28.55%. The estimated remaining amount is $1,341,850. Add on the $118,000 in short-term funding interest. The total estimated to fund this project is $1,459,850. So in the next slide, you'll see when we go for long-term funding, what we're estimating is a 10-year, a 15-year, or a 20-year funding term. And you'll see that, just like in the real world, when we do loans, the longer term you have, the higher the interest rate. But the longer term you have, the smaller the payments. So you'll see over 10 years, it's going to be $165,000 approximately per year. Over 15 years, $120,000. And then over 20 years, $95,000 per year. So then I went to Rainey Moran, our tax collector, and asked them to do up some figures for us on how it's going to impact you, the taxpayer. The assumptions, again, that the total cost for the town that we would have to finance is $1,459,850. Based on our grand list, and then based on the average tax bill, you'll see that the cost for a 10-year loan is $39.16 per year for the average homeowner. For a 15-year loan, the average increase to the annual tax is $28.91. And then if we go with a 20-year route, it would be $23.20 per year. Some other questions that have been raised is how long will it take the state to reimburse? Typically, a bulk of the reimbursement is quick. The final payment can take time due to the state audit requirement. Bill or Melinda, can you explain that state audit requirement?
Yeah, I will. So at the completion of the project, the state will typically hold back 15% of their total reimbursement until they complete their internal audit. At which time they come in, they go through all the bills, they go through all the AIA documentation to make sure everything is in order before they release that final payment. The state, like most other people in that department, is drastically understaffed. So when we did the addition to the school in 2007, it had been well past a year, and we hadn't received that final audit yet. And in the end, I believe the building committee opted to hire a private auditor to complete the audit for us so that we could get that final reimbursement.
Why wasn't this done during the last roof project? The state will only reimburse the town for roof replacements that are past their life expectancy. When the additions were made to the elementary school and high school, the portions were under 20 years old at the time and not eligible for the reimbursement. The sections included in this project are not the same sections of roof that were replaced after snow removal damage during the removal operations in the winter of 2013. What are the risks of not doing the roof project now? Potential for reimbursement grant percentage could go lower or go away completely. Potential further damage and increase in funds needed to repair. The gymnasium floor or technology sections of the school could be compromised, so which means equipment could be damaged due to roof leaks. One section of roof is over the gymnasium and leaks onto the floor of the basketball court would lead to additional cost. And this is your project timeline. So if we start from just right now, we have the special town meeting. Next week, it will go to referendum. If it passes, the grant application will be submitted to the state. March or April, it will go out to bid. And the idea is for June of 2020, after school lets out, for construction to immediately begin. And then substantially be completed by the start of school in September of 2020. And then by November of 2020, the project is anticipated to be completed. If it fails, the issue will go back in front of the Building Committee, Board of Education, and Board of Selectmen for reconsideration. So, and you'll see additional questions that have been asked. When will the project start and complete? If it passes, like I just said, we'll start at the end of the regular school year and hopefully complete by fall of 2020. Is this roof repair part of a solar initiative? No. The solar on the roof concept has been abandoned. If solar is done for the complex, it will be ground supported. Question 3, will the town emergency fund be used to pay for the project initially? No. For bonding purposes, the town is required to sustain a certain level, and it is more reasonable to secure short-term and long-term bonding for this project. How did the town allow the roof to fall into this state of disrepair, and what are the plans in the future to remediate these major cost incursions? The roof sections that were done in 2007 are going to be due in 2027. At that time, the building committee will review and make its recommendations. Is this included in the per pupil rate for use for budgeting? No. Large capital expenditures related to the facility are not included in that rate. Why not? It would be hard to predict that amount. The funds are better left in the citizens' pockets until they can be reasonably spent. Are there any other major repairs or projects? Large capital projects are on the horizon. The Board of Education, Thompson Public Schools Administration, and the Board of Selectmen are always looking for the best ways to get the most for the citizens' dollars. Projects such as the roofs that fall under state grant qualifications, where the town can recover 70+% of tax dollars, that's what we're going to see. What are the current health and safety concerns? The maintenance staff has been diligent in ensuring that leaks are identified and remediated as soon as possible. Tiles are replaced and affected areas are dried out to prevent mold. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you again to Justin Young who put this all together for us. This was fabulous.
Mr. Mann has a question. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
no, I don't even have a question, just a statement. Yeah, awesome job on this. I think it's great. Some of the questions that I was going to ask were in this presentation, so I don't have to ask them. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Matt Polsky, 92 Sunset Hill Road.
Yes,
What would be the likelihood of cost changes, and you're taking out anything that protrudes from the roof and then putting it back on? This stuff is over 20 years old. something rusts and breaks and you go to put it back on, then you probably have to replace it. So you got a stack and you go to replace that stack and you broke it, taking it off. What's the likelihood of that needing to increase that cost from the $4.7 million?
I'm going to pass your question, Matt, on to Bill, but we also have a representative, Ty and Bond, the engineering firm. So between the two of you, I'm sure that we can answer that question for you. Bill?
So yeah, that's always a possibility with equipment that's this old. But there is a contingency fund carried in the project of 15% to, hopefully cover any of those unforeseen circumstances. Both ourselves and Ty and Bond has had representatives on the move to survey the equipment and look at the general condition. It appears to mostly be in pretty good shape. But as you said, once you pull it up, there could be anything in there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We're 200 Quarter Lane Road.
Yep.
So we're going to obviously be removing the air conditioning units and stuff off of the roof. Now, have we looked at the long term? Is it worth really putting these back up now? At this point, are they young enough at this point to make it worth it? Or should we be looking at the bigger picture saying, hey, we're going to spend, $30,000, $40,000 lifting these things back on the roof? Should we be looking at it saying, do we need to replace these units at this point? So the taxpayers don't pay twice for this. Does anybody know the life expectancy and how long they've been on the roof at this point? Does anybody know at this point?
So most of the equipment that we're looking at here, these are on the roof of the high school, and when the high school was built, first of all, there's no air conditioning. So there is no refrigeration work up there at all. These are air handling units, hot water coils. Those are all internal. They're below the roof deck, they're housed within the building. The parts that go through the roof are mostly exhaust fans and air intake units, where just a series of dampers and movers, really not much mechanical up there at all. So I believe that for the most part, they have a long life expectancy left. They're all direct drive exhaust fans for the most part.
Yes, sir.
Matt Visual, in Valley View. What's the likelihood of grant not there?
That is extremely unlikely. The Office of School Construction oversees every school construction project within the state. There is no moratorium on grants going out at this point. I have to say, I've never heard of a grant not being approved unless it was a non-reimbursable project, which this is a fully reimbursable project.
Yes, ma'am.
Austin, 1075 Thompson Road. I understand that we're bound because it's a state project, but how many quotes have we got that from state people? Have we only got one quote?
At this point, I think I can answer this. We have not gone out to bid yet. What we have is an estimate that was designed from the engineering firm Ty and Bond. Once the referendum passes and the town approves us appropriating $4.7 million towards this project, we will go out to bid to state registered contractors. They have to be state registered, am I right? Bill? How does that work?
I'm not exactly sure if I think they have to be vetted by the state. They don't necessarily have to be on the state bid list, so to speak.
Okay.
But they have to be qualified bids.
Okay. But at that point, we'll know what the totals, what people are bidding. We don't have.
So it may be less than what you projected.
At this point, what's that? I'm sorry.
They may be less than what you
Yes,
projected.
absolutely.
Because we may go out to bid. is
Yes.
what I know. But we can't do that until it's appropriate.
Correct.
Okay. So
Can I
then
answer your
also
question? Yeah. You have another question? Go ahead.
So I know you said we have the 50% contingency for when you take the stuff off the roof. Does that also include if we find any mold problems, once you start lifting everything up and finding out? Well, since it's been leaking so long?
The contingency.
So the contingency is carried for any unknown expense that may come up. We don't anticipate that we're going to find any environmental problems as we start to pull that roof deck off, but nobody can say for certain, but we certainly don't anticipate that.
And I'm presuming that we're looking at a shingle roof and not that metal roof being put on?
Jamie and Mary McKine, I'm the engineer for the project. It's not shingle or metal, it's a membrane roof. It's an
Membrane?
EPDM membrane roof that we're proposing for use.
Okay.
And just to the last question, as part of the preliminary work for the design, we go out and we do a bunch of test cuts on all the different portions of the roof to kind of figure out exactly what's there for the existing system. And they didn't note that there was any evident mold or anything that we found in the roofing system.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Not usually 10 Valley Junior. So I actually just had my roof done, and I could select different levels of quality building materials. What are we getting for this money? Is this going to be, are we going to have this quarter with like decent materials that can last 30 years? Or are we trying to go with cheapest, get it done? Like, what are we going with?
The project specifications for the materials will be for a 30-year warranty system.
Yes, sir.
Justin Young, 12 Fairway Drive. Question's probably going to go for time on. How's your estimate accuracy been on jobs in the past? So when you've gone in and done these estimates in the past, how accurate have you been on these jobs?
Fairly accurate. You know, we typically try to be within 5% generally. I will say we never try to be the low bidder for a project because the worst thing is, you know, we try to sharpen a pencil, you know, as much as we can and make the number look really good, and then you go out for public bidding and you know it's higher. So typically we like to come in right in the middle of the pack for the bids that we receive. Recent projects we've done, like I said, have been in the 5% range. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Susan Essens, 356 Round Mill Road. Question on, do we have a capital budget, 5-10-year capital budget, so when we know things are starting to age, and there's going to be these expenses that are going to come up. If you have a leaky roof, you've got to fix it, or you would at our home. But are we able to maybe going forward as a town, well, first of all, do we have a capital budget that goes 5-10 years that includes projects like this?
Sure.
Capital plan.
Hi, Susan.
Yes, we do. As part of the annual budget, we have a 5-year capital improvement budget. That's maintained on an annual basis. We could certainly grow on that in relation to projects that we see way down the road beyond 5 years. But currently, it's structured as a 5-year capital improvement project.
So that's why this project wouldn't be on this current
Current budget,
because it was
correct.
never really added on 5 years ago.
Yes, that's correct. And it was not added last year either. It was foreseen as an eventual project. We have been working with Ty and Bond for the last 2 years, I believe now, on the study for this project. But it did not make it into the capital improvement budget for the current year's budget.
That may be helpful going forward, you know, so that we're not hit with the total cost all at once. Like I think for the library roof, we've been putting aside some money every
correct.
year. Now, I do know we're having trouble passing that around, losing money short. That's why I've always been, we've got to get more revenue in town. The other question is on debt. When we add this to our debt, is that going to put us close to some kind of a threshold or ceiling that we should, so that we won't have money to borrow for other projects? Because we know we're going to have other projects coming up.
Not necessarily. It's not going to be taken out of our fund balance at this stage, which currently stands somewhere close to about 9%. So it's not going to affect the fund balance. Yes, it will affect our ability to be able to, and we will be increasing our debt service based on the numbers that we provided. So it is going to affect the budget next year, and I think we provided some estimates on where that would be based on people's taxes. But yes, it is going to eventually affect the budget because of the debt service required.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Karen Lamontagne, 458 Canadian Road. Have we had a health inspection in the school with all of the leaks in the ceilings to see if we do already have an old issue?
Can I ask maybe Bill or Melinda, did you hear that question?
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Have we had a health inspection in the school system with all of the leaks that are in the roof currently? I know for a fact in the lunchroom, kids have to be moved from tables because the roof is leaking in the lunchroom. I wouldn't want to eat in a lunchroom where the roof was leaking.
So,
I think our kids' health is very important.
So absolutely. So to answer your question, yes, the leak in the high school cafeteria is substantial. It's gotten worse in the past few weeks. So when it's raining, there is an active leak there. Again, as soon as it stops raining, they were down there yesterday changing tiles in that area to remove any of the wet material. There has not been a formal inspection by, I don't know who.
Like the health department.
Like by the health department? Nope, there has not been a formal inspection by them.
My daughter herself has asthma. Mold will exacerbate asthma, causing illness in the child, causing them to be out of school, out of their learning environment. We need to take the kids' health and the employees' health very seriously with this roof. Thank you.
Anyone? If the voters will permit, I have a question of my own to ask. Maybe of Orla.
Yes?
Does the town have any bonds maturing during the life of this project that will impact your calculation of the tax burden on the?
No, there is the original school project from 2007. The bond will be maturing in 2027, which actually is around the time that we will be looking to replace the roof on the newer part of the project. So it's not going to affect it at this stage.
Anyone else? Tom?
Tom Angelo, 640 Fabian Road, full transparency, Board of Education member, Turtle Out Alumni Association for trustees member. Now that we have some of the Board of Ed members and also our superintendent, this is part of this, but maybe we should on Monday for our Board of Education meeting add the request of Mrs. Lamontagne to possibly entertain a audit on the health and I can't remember the exact terms you used, but on checking for mold inside the ceiling, just to make sure for the health of the students. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Any questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Jessica Bolte, 1081 Riverside Drive. In regards to the concern about mold, I have 14 years in the industry. I have worked for an insurance carrier. I have the same exact certifications that are representative from ServPro, Service Master, Paul Davis Restoration. I go to the same exact trainings, and actually I went to for their mold remediation. The issue with mold is, in order for an industrial hygienist or an environmental company to come out and test it, you have to have no active leaking. Active leaking will cause the test results not to be accurate. So in order for any industrial or appropriate environmental testing to be done, you have to stop the water source. So I understand, I'm with you on that. I see mold every day. I work in it every day. However, in order to either remediate or even test for it, the water has to stop. We can't do that until the roof situation is taken care of.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Rob Ward, 452 Old Davis Road. If I could just ask a clarification to your question.
Of course.
Well, can you describe again what you stated around the current bond that will come to maturity? As I understand it, that's 2027.
Yes,
That would be
that's
during the
correct.
time period that this bond would be an obligation to the town.
It will be an
So
obligation.
would one, to some degree offset the other? Granted, there could be other things that happen 5-10 years from now that will be added to that. In the current state, that would expire during the new obligation coming forward.
Yes, but what we will be receiving for short-term funding will be a bond anticipation note, which is it's known commonly as a bond. That does not put us in vulnerable situation for our ratings with Moody's. are with regards to any tax exempt bonds that we will, at this stage, or plan to get down the road. The long-term funding is likely to be less than 2 million. So the dollar amount is reasonably low. When we get to close to having to bond for about 10 million plus during a year, that's when things get of concern to both the rating agencies and our auditors and any other potential organizations or any banking establishments that we plan to do business with. So I don't see it being an issue.
It's not an issue. Can I ask a follow-up?
Certainly.
So if this were, let's say we took the middle numbers and it cost us $120,000 a year on a 15-year horizon. When the 2007 project is fully paid, how much will that reduce the burden on the town?
Well, the 2007 bond, I can't remember what the debt service is on a year, but we have, what are we year in, 2000, we've got 7 years left on that bond. I'll have to provide, I don't know what the debt service is on it all, I'll have to provide it for you tomorrow. Okay.
I think it would be important to note on that, as we take on something new,
Yeah.
it's going to carry for 15 years, whatever we select, there may be something here that's going to expire, or there is something that will be fully paid by 2027. So,
That makes sense. I will provide that, I'll get that information, I'll forward it to you tomorrow.
thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Karen Montini again. I just wanted to add that I agree with you as far as some of the mold issues and being testing, but mold sports travel, and they have taken many titles out of the ceiling, and I'm sure surfaces in that school have not been 100% spick and span cleaned, and they could probably still test the surface.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Richard Rolex, just like you, baby, is the school unsafe to occupy at this time?
Question is to the safety of the school at present. Who wants to address it?
I'll address it. The school is safe to occupy. We haven't tested the air quality in the high school cafeteria, and I agree with both of you that the water has to stop running into that area. But I will tell you that we do a very good job at changing those tiles on a regular basis so that they don't sit there and start to grow mold. We'll certainly take a look at that area to see if there's any surface mold up in the above the ceiling, but the school is safe.
Well, it's obviously been leaking for some time. Does it make more sense to wait after the 2020 census to even look at this issue? There's grumbling about the future of the school. Every meeting I go to, there's talk of the future of the school. Doesn't it make more sense to wait till next year's numbers? It didn't start leaking yet. We've been patching it. What's the cost of continuing to patch the existing roof versus buying a brand new roof for a school that is in question down the road?
Yes, sir.
So I think what's important to remember is whether the school remains a school or whether it does not remain a school is a town asset, a town building, and whether tomorrow if it turns into town hall or whether it remains a school or whether they split it up and we keep an elementary school and the rest of it becomes a town building, it's a town asset. So if we don't put a roof on it and we just let it continue to go into disrepair, it goes from an asset to a burden. And that costs more money at the end of the day to tear it down and get rid of it than it does just to repair it at this point, especially when we're getting 70+% back from the state. Your state tax dollars that you're paying in your paychecks are coming back to this town versus us having to pay the full 4.7 million out of pocket, in my opinion.
And may I add, Justin, you just made a spot on point, that we're actually getting money, our taxpayer dollars back from the state of Connecticut. We should be happy about that. It's something we can use that's useful towards an asset to the town. Excellent, excellent answer, Justin.
Yes, ma'am.
Jessica Pulte, 1081 Riverside Drive. Board of Finance also received a presentation at the not December meeting, November's meeting. It would cost an additional $1.6 million for us to outsource that high school, so it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Anyone else? Tom?
Tom Angelo, 640 Fabian Road, you know the rest. But I will say, also as a Turtle Rock graduate, there's a lot of history in this town. The good news is right now, there's a new development going up in Quinnebog. 32 homes, I believe, are going to be building there. There's 18 homes going up on 193, and I believe there's another development, can't remember how many houses. Was it 42, Sean? The one off of Route 200? Proposed 42 homes?
Well, gravel pit.
So within the next year, there's at least 50 homes, not counting the potential for another 42 and then however many else come up. I'm sure there's going to be children involved in these homes. So, again, there's a lot of very valid points, but there was a presentation to the Board of Finance, and it was, I think, 1.9 million, if I'm not mistaken, not 1.6, but whatever it is.
It was 1.6 after the first year where we would have paid the severance.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough right there. But anyone that has any questions about that, I would ask that you please go back and look at those statistics, look at the rates, look at the funding and all that, just to be outsourced. And that's only the high school. That's not counting the other schools. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Dave Ford, 200 Porter Plain Road. Obviously, she's expressed, it seems like this has been an ongoing issue in our cafeteria for quite some time. So I'm kind of curious as to how long this has been going on, and since we've talked about the money we've already spent to fix these situations, I can understand if it was going on for a week or so, a week and a half or something, giving us the time to repair it. But if this has been a lengthy thing, I'm kind of curious to why this hasn't been fixed already. I understand, putting the amount of money we're going to put into this roof, it's a lot of money, and we're going to feel the tax burden from it. So I didn't know if this is something that we were holding off repairing, because it kind of sounds like it's been going on for a long time, enough to where it gets concerned.
It does sound so. Anyone want to address
I
that?
can take that. So if you look at the grand scheme of it, yes, it has been going on for a long time. But let me clarify that that's off and on. So this entire area of this roof, this whole 98,000 square feet, we have a crew of roofers that are going to be on site again next week. So they'll come and they're going to repair all the leaks that they can find. Maybe not all of them, maybe 90% of them, 95% of them. But then the first time it gets cold and the first time it gets warm again, that membrane is going to split maybe in the same place, maybe in another place. So we'll talk about this spot in the cafeteria, which seems to be a hot button, and it does. It keeps coming back. It is at a place where the 2007 addition meets the 1986 building. So there is a, let's call it a seam in the structure right there. So there are these seams there, and it's the older part of the roof. Again, as I said, it gets hot, it gets cold, it freezes, it splits again, and they come back again. And that's what we will continue to do until we get a new roof on this building.
So we not repairing it properly? Now, I'm actually a construction person. I do commercial roofing, big stores, Walmart Corporation. Are we not putting the right repairs needs? Because I understand on a flat roof that we're talking about, you can do what's called a temporary repair. A lot of people use cheap, some cheap like Carnac. Are we going that cheap in that area? Why are we not putting membrane over it and actually gearing it down to it? That's my concern.
So the leaks generally, 99% of the time, the leaks are occurring either where there is, if you're in commercial roofing, where the termination bars are, where the penetrations are, where the roof drains are, where there is something else that's attached to that membrane is where the roof pulls away from the masonry, from the adjoining structures, from the drains. And again, they're not using cheap materials. They're repairing these areas to the best of their ability. But when you get to the ends, and the sun does just as much damage as the ice does, you get a good hot day and that starts to stretch and then it cools off again. I mean, this EDPM is 32 years old. It has lost just about all the elasticity that it had. So anything that makes it move is going to make it tear.
I think more of my concern on this, because everybody's here for the kids. Okay, if it wasn't for the kids, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So my concern is more this, it sounds like this has been going on in the cafeteria for a long time in this area where we've been kind of scooting them around. So my concern is that we're not doing something to the best of our ability, doing annual roof inspections, going up there and taking preventive maintenance, then that is where mold comes in. I do mold remediation also, so I understand the concept of it, but I also understand I'll put a little extra money out to make sure something's better. You know, so that's the main issue is we don't want the surprises off it. We want to make sure that we're doing the best we can. So that's my concern at this point. Mold, I know somebody that was in the hospital for quite some serious time over mold, so that's not something we want. We don't want to deal with that. Nor do I want anybody else's kids in that situation.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thompson. Just to follow up, you said that some of the membranes there, when connecting to the older buildings, is getting leaks. When we put the new roof on with the membranes, and we're connecting to the old roofs, where we would be having those issues connecting, since you said we're having some of the connecting issues with the drain coming down, the water coming in. So will that be affecting the new roof connecting to the older roofs? Will that be happening again?
Yeah, I would say, you know, the design for the project has a ton of different details in there where old roof connects with new roof. And typically, if you look at them, will overlap onto the old roofing side. So again, those connections will be made, you know, to the best of the ability within industry standards. You know, eventually that older roof is gonna get to the point where that's outlived its useful life. But in terms of the new roof going on, all the connections and all the terminations and transitions between the two roofing systems will be made, you know, the best they can be made with the technology nowadays.
Yes, Rob. Just one quick question, because I like your question. Robert Mann, 15 Meadow Drive. With the connections, now with the 30-year warranty, do we know, you know, obviously we don't know who's bidding on it, and we want a 30-year warranty. Are those connections going to be under warranty? Or are those things that are, you know, the roof is under warranty, but those connections are kind of, you know, floating issue?
Everything that's completed as part of this project will be covered under the 30-year warranty. You know, something on the 2007.
Including the connections that they have to connect to a new roof. To
as long as it's associated with the new roof going in. You know, if it's a connection to an older piece of roof and 2 feet out on an older piece, there's an issue. Obviously, that will be covered under this.
Perfect. Thank you.
Under the new project. But all the workmanship of this project for the roof drains and the terminations and the masonry walls and stuff will be covered under the warranty for this project.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Questions? Comments? For? Against? Anything? All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and if the motion is seconded and carried, this meeting will adjourn to a referendum on the 15th. Who wants the motion to adjourn?
John Bailey.
Motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
Steve Herbert. I'll second that.
All those in favor of adjourning this meeting to referendum, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, signify by saying no. Motion carries, meeting is